I love laying down fresh tracks in a newly harrowed arena. I think every rider I've ever talked to also does. But I also hate it. You can see every little deviation in the line of travel that you were meant to be on. So let's take a circle for example. It can be really hard to ride a perfectly round circle. It might be one of the hardest things that you actually ask your horse to do. And a small part of that stems from thinking that you're riding it well already. But the tracks don't lie. So, whether you ride to quarter markers on your circle, real or imagined ones, or have a cone in the middle to judge your distance from, there are two things you need to be able to do. You need to see where that invisible circle path is ahead of you and keep your horse on it. Sounds pretty easy, only two steps. So, how can you practice a round circle before it all goes to pot? And what if no one has harrowed the ring? Well, one of my favorite things to do, and I often do this at a clinic, is I lay out a circle on the ground, marking it with white flour, although whole wheat would probably work too. Might depend on the color of your footing. So I mark out a 20-meter or 60-foot circle. And inside it, I put four 10-meter or 30-foot circles, kind of like two figure eights inside the big circle, so it looks like a flower. Well, that could be confusing because now we have a flower like you'll find in the garden, created with flour like you'll find in the kitchen. So, most of the references that I make as I keep talking to you are going to be referring to the flour from your kitchen. And you can also use lime, but most people already have flour. So, you can also start just by marking out the 20-meter circle, or even a variety of sizes in various parts of your arena, and save the actual figure 80 flowery pattern for after you've made improvement on just following a single circle. So, the easiest way to lay out these circles is that I anchor my lunge line in the middle of the circle, or I get a person to hold it and then just pivot on the spot. And then I measure off 30 feet, which is half of my 60-foot circle. And then I walk a circle around that center point at that distance, dropping flour as I go. You might want to choose a non-windy day to do that. So next you're going to want to warm your horse up where there's no flour on the ground and get him bending to the best of his ability. You might also want to lay out a couple of straight or wavy lines separate from your circles to practice riding over and along in your warm-up to get your horse used to stepping on the flour. If it's much of a color difference from the footing, they sometimes perceive lighter things as taller, things that may need to be jumped over. So when your horse is used to the flour on the ground and sufficiently warmed up, we're going to attempt your first circle. So you're going to ride right over top of the flour. Now obviously that flour won't last long, but after the first couple of circles you can just follow your tracks. Well, that's the plan anyways. When I do a clinic, it seems that 20-meter circle develops a path that's about 3 to 4 feet or over 1 meter wide, proving that it's harder than it sounds. As you ride the circle, see if you can keep that white line centered between your horse's ears. The best way to learn to ride round circles is to ride round circles. So this is a good thing to practice often. So you want to notice, by observing your horse's position relative to that white line, at what point does he drift out of the circle, and at what point does he drift into the circle. If it's an environmental magnet, like a gate or the barn, you'll find that where they drift out will be consistent, whether they're going to the left or the right, and on the opposite side of the circle, if they've been drifting out, they'll try to drift in. In both cases, putting themselves closer to that environmental magnet. You can also think of that environmental magnet as a mental imbalance, because it's more about their mind than their body. Where the brain goes, the feet will follow. If the environmental magnet is another horse that they like, then where they drift may not be consistent, but will still be towards wherever their friend is, and occasionally away from a horse that they feel threatened by. So, by identifying the magnets that are pulling your horse, you can be proactive in your correction. If the drift in or out of the circle is a physical imbalance, you'll often find that if they're traveling, say, to the right, and they drift out of the circle, then when they travel to the left, they'll drift into the circle. In both cases in that example, they're drifting left, and that's often an indication that their left legs are stronger and they're trying to get the weight off of the right ones and move it to the left. But that can vary and requires further testing to determine the optimum correction, because there can be an imbalance of strength, suppleness, and the fact that the horse has 4 legs on the ground, not 2, it might even be only one of the 4 that's got a strength or suppleness problem. And then, of course, the drifting on the circle can be both a physical and mental imbalance happening at the same time. So there's lots of diagnostics to figure into it, and that's why riding a circle is so hard. But step one to diagnosing what is happening is to know exactly where they're supposed to be traveling. So laying out a circle with flour and then staying on it, and then on your tracks when the flour disappears, is a challenge for most horses, but also a great learning opportunity. In Coffee at the Barn, I got to interview Ida Norris of Ida Norris Dressage, and she shared her triangle circle exercise because, as a judge of both traditional and Western dressage, she recognizes how important riding circles is to a horse's balance and the many things that can go wrong with bending and steering, the geometry, which we're talking about here, as well as tempo control, which is a loss of balance forward. But regardless whether it's physical imbalance or an environmental one, the corrections I want to share with you today are the same. So, starting in walk, there are 2 corrections that you can use to keep your circle round, and if you use them proactively, others won't realize that you're course correcting as you go. And while they can be done in any gait, let's not run before we can walk. So, if your horse is drifting out of the circle, I want you to think about riding a step of turn on the haunches every so often as needed. So this might even feel like your circle is more of a stop sign shape on the side that they're drifting out. So instead of going around and having them like following the circle and having them drift, you're going to try and follow that circle and step in, and try and follow the circle and step in on the side that they're drifting out. So this realigns the shoulders onto the line of travel. It also makes the horse more responsive to your outside aids so that you can use them more effectively as a block before he thinks about drifting out. I also had the pleasure of interviewing Taryn Warren of TNT Quarter Horses for the Coffee at the Barn membership, and her exercise of choice was the oval for straightness and attention to detail. And here again, an oval requires 2 half circles. And while transitioning between circles and straight lines is a challenge to do well, the easiest way to teach your horse to travel straight lines is actually to perfect your bending lines. Because if you can stop them from drifting in or out with a bend, you can certainly do it straight. For the horse that's drifting into the circle, we have 2 corrections depending on your horse's training level. So if the horse knows how to leg yield, which is moving forwards and sideways with the front and hind end moving over an equal amount, then you can use that to move your horse back out to the line of travel or proactively block him from drifting in. There's actually even an interview with me in Coffee at the Barn, which focuses on teaching your horse to leg yield, and I explain many of the things that you need to watch out for that make it either incorrect or harder for your horse to do. So all 3 of those interviews are in Coffee at the Barn, and each is an interview style lesson, around 20 minutes, so you have time to listen and go ride your horse and try it. There's a link on the page here somewhere. But what if you want to work on circles now and your horse doesn't understand leg yield yet? So if you find that you're having to use your inside leg strongly, or if the horse is less experienced, then instead of pushing them out to the line of travel, you'll use the same aids to block the horse from falling in, while asking them to ride straight ahead until they get back on the original circle. This way you won't have to get strong with the inside leg, which is counterproductive. As soon as you get strong and try and push, your weight actually goes the wrong way to where you want the horse to be going, and you'll be blocking with your other leg when you're trying to apply that increased pressure. So if we can leg yield out to the circle easily, we'll do that. But if not, same aids to say don't fall in, just ride straight until you get to the circle again, and then follow it. So keep it light and balanced. And if you want to go deeper in any of this, check the link on this page for Coffee at the Barn. It's a membership, and you can literally have 4 new 20-minute lessons each month to go do with your horse for less than the price of a good coffee, or sign up for the year and get 2 months free. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. I hope this has helped you, because it's your job to help your horse perfect his circles, to improve his balance. Otherwise, he'll be struggling. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.